Hey, tonight we're going back to a time when an empire gasped its final breath, a moment that reshaped the world, brick by broken brick. It's the spring of 1453. You're in Constantinople, the last flickering light of the Roman Empire. The world outside its ancient walls is crumbling. The air smells of smoke, wet stone, and something older like history exhaling for the last time. But before we begin, where are you listening from tonight? What time is it there? Is it bedtime already? Or are you just lying down to relax for a while? Drop a comment below. I love seeing where these sleepy journeys reach. And if you enjoy drifting into the past like this, a like or a gentle subscribe would help more than you know. All right, pull the covers up, sink into comfort, and let your body go still. We're stepping into a world of candlelight, whispers, and the rumble of distant cannons. The year is 1453. In the streets of Constantinople, the mood is tense, like the held breath of a dying man. It's a city trapped between past glory and looming doom. Once the jewel of the world, the new Rome now feels like a cracked relic, held together by prayers and desperation. You awaken to the cold stone beneath your thin straw mattress. The room is dim, lit only by the last coals of a fire that died hours ago. Rats scurry near the hearth. The walls are thick, but they do little to hold back the distant boom of Ottoman cannons pounding against the outer defenses. You sit up slowly. Every muscle aches. You've been taking shifts at the wall 3 hours on, 3 hours off for days now. The last time you slept properly, a different moon hung in the sky. You pull on your worn tunic and wrap a coarse wool cloak around your shoulders. There's no time to waste. The Ottomans fire day and night. No one knows when they'll breach the walls, but everyone feels it coming. You can taste it in the air, like copper and dust. Outside, the streets are nearly silent. No horses, no merchants shouting prices. Just the shuffle of refugees moving like ghosts between ruined buildings. Entire families sleep in churches, schools, basements, anywhere the ceiling might hold a little longer. You pass by Hagia Sophia. Its grand dome rises against the early morning sky, still defiant, still beautiful, even as chunks of masonry lie shattered at its base. You remember hearing that this was once the largest cathedral in the world. Now it shelters women and children, their faces pale, their prayers unceasing. You keep moving. Atop the city walls, soldiers are already lined up. Some are professional Genoese mercenaries in polished armor. Others, like you, are simply men with little choice. Bakers, fishers, students, priests, holding swords that haven't been sharpened in weeks. Holding spears whose tips are more rust than iron. You take your place along the battlement. The mortar between the stones is cracked. Beneath your boots, there's a pile of loose rubble swept to the side. It's from yesterday's bombardment. You can see where a cannonball struck just 15 feet down the wall. If it had hit here, you'd have been pulp. The city groans as the next shot lands. The walls tremble. Somewhere far off, a bell rings, whether as warning or from falling debris, no one knows. Beside you stands an older man. He doesn't speak. He's missing 2 fingers on his left hand. His right clutches a pike that looks older than you are. He glances at you for a second. Just a glance, no nod, no smile. Then turns back to the horizon, watching for shadows. You both wait. Enthendrums. Low, steady, and rhythmic. Ottoman war drums echo across the plains outside the walls. They sound like thunder, but more alive. Like a heartbeat, but not yours. The city holds its breath. Even the wind seems to stop. You lean out slightly over the battlement, eyes squinting through morning mist and smoke. There, across the field, the siege camp stirs. Tents ripple in the breeze. Soldiers in red and green form up in lines. Standard bearers lift the crescent banners. And in the distance atop a white horse sits Sultan Mehmed II. Just 21 years old, but with the weight of centuries behind his gaze. He raises his arm. Another cannon fires. This one hits the outer wall just left of your position. You flinch as stone shrapnel scatters into the sky. The ground beneath your feet shakes again. Someone screams, and you don't know whether they're hurt or just afraid. Maybe both. The captain shouts an order. Everyone tenses. Arrows are notched, oil is warmed, crossbows raised, but still nothing comes. Just the drums. You think about food. You haven't eaten since yesterday's ration, half a loaf of black bread and a few olives. Your stomach cramps quietly, a hollow ache you're used to by now. In the city behind you, the patriarch leads a mass. Latin and Greek Christians alike pray in their own languages. Under the same fading roof, for the first time in 1,000 years, the Orthodox and Catholic churches are united. Not by peace, but by fear. You remember your mother's hands as she sewed your coat before the siege began. She'd said you'd grow into it. You haven't. The sleeves are still too long. Another impact. This time, closer. You duck reflexively, hands over your head. Dust rains down. One of the mercenaries nearby spits blood. He caught a stone fragment in the lip. The captain calls for rotation. You descend the inner stairs into the wall's lower levels. It's dark here, lit by oil lamps. The walls sweat moisture, and the stone smells like mildew and old wine. You pass the kitchen, what's left of it. A pot of soup, if it can be called that, simmers on a low fire. Someone ladles you a bowl. It's mostly water with a hint of cabbage and maybe lentils? Maybe not. You take it anyway. You sit near the fire, shoulder to shoulder with 3 others. No one speaks. A younger boy, 16, maybe shakes so hard he spills some of his soup. No one laughs. One of the men quietly refills his bowl. Somewhere above, cannonballs fall again. You close your eyes for a moment. Just a moment. When you open them again, hours have passed. You're back on the wall. The sky has darkened sunset or smoke. It's hard to tell. And then you hear it cheering, not from your side, from the Ottoman lines. You squint into the gloom. They're pushing something forward. Massive, creaking, metal-clad monsters on wheels. Ziga towers. Your captain goes pale, one by one. The towers inch closer, dragged by oxen and shouting men. Each one looms taller than the city walls, bristling with archers and spears, like giant wooden beasts awakened from some dark myth. Behind them, the great bombard still smokes, its mouth glowing faintly from another recent blast. You feel it deep in your chest, that creeping weight that makes your breath come shallow. The walls have held for weeks, but now it feels like the city is a candle and the wind is picking up. The commander walks by, shouting orders, his voice hoarse from days of yelling. Boiling oil to the front. Archers ready. If they breach the wall, fall back to the second gate. No heroes. Just hold. You nod without thinking. Your fingers shake as you check your bowstring. It's frayed. You pretend it isn't. Down in the city, bells toll. Church bells. Alarm bells. Every bell in Constantinople, it seems, is crying out. And yet you feel strangely calm. Maybe it's the exhaustion. Maybe it's because you've made peace with dying. Or maybe it's because, in that moment, standing atop a wall that has defied centuries of conquest, you feel like a thread tied to something older than fear. Something that won't be cut easily. Then comes the roar. The towers reach the moat. Ramps are lowered. And the enemy charges. Thousands of feet stamp the earth like a drumbeat of doom. Arrows fly in black clouds. Firepots arc through the air. One lands close showering you, in sparks and smoke. You fire back, barely aiming. Another arrow, then another. The man beside you screams and falls backward. You don't see what hit him. You just step over him and keep shooting. They're on the walls now. Ladders clatter against the stone. Grappling hooks pull tight. You see faces young, furious, desperate at climbing up to kill you. Your blade draws itself. Steel rings out. You parry. You stab. You kick a ladder loose and watch men fall like rag dolls into the moat below. But still they come. Hand to hand now. Metal on metal. Blood on stone. The wall is a storm of bodies and flame. Somewhere, someone yells, "They're inside!" And your stomach drops? The gate has fallen. You don't know how. Not exactious, that word spreads like fire on dry wood. They're inside. They're in the city. Some say it was the Kirkaporta. A small postern gate left unguarded for a moment too long. Others say it was a breach in the wall. It doesn't matter now, the Ottomans are within. You retreat, along with the others what's left of the wall garrison. Down spiral stairs slick with blood and broken weapons, through narrow passageways that echo with screams. You pass the body of a friend, face down, crushed beneath a fallen beam. You do not stop. Outside, chaos reigns. Citizens flee through the alleys, clutching children and icons. Fires spread from rooftop to rooftop. The sky, once bright with the promise of dawn, is now black with smoke. You hear chanting from the Hagia Sophia. People are gathering there, in desperation, seeking sanctuary. 1,000 years of faith behind those walls. 1,000 candles lit for mercy. You want to go there too, but your orders are clear. Hold the second line near the Forum of Constantine. A last stand. You join a ragged line of defenders, priests, old men, a few soldiers still breathing. Everyone is quiet. No speeches. Just the clink of swords and the rustle of armor being tightened one final time. You think of your home, of the fig tree outside your window, of your mother humming while she made bread. The sound of hooves pulls you back to the present. The Janissaries are here. You've heard stories. Elite troops of the Sultan, trained from childhood, feared across empires. Now they round the corner like a wave of steel and red, eyes expressionless, blades already bloodied. You raise your weapon, and you run forward. The clash is instant, thunderous. Your blade meets theirs with a jolt that travels through your bones. The man in front of you is young, maybe no older than you, his eyes blank, movements mechanical drilled into perfection. He lunges. You deflect, but barely. You counter, and somehow miraculously draw blood. He falls. Another replaces him. There's no time to think. Just the rhythm of survival parry, swing, duck, breathe. Bodies pile. Smoke thickens. And all around you, Constantinople screams. Behind you, an old priest swings a censer like a mace. Its silver head crashes against a soldier's helmet, sending sparks. The priest doesn't stop to pray. He moves like a man who has lost everything but the will to fight. Then a horn sounds. High, shrill, cutting through the chaos. A call to retreat again. Someone yells your name, but you can't see who. Your vision is clouded, your legs numb. You fall back, stumbling over rubble and corpses toward the inner city. The Meze Road is a river of panicked civilians, wounded soldiers, screaming children. Some carry relics, others just whatever they could grab. Loaves of bread, jewelry, letters from home. You pass a man sitting calmly on a step, blood soaking his robes. He watches the flood of people and hums to himself, unmoved. You glance to the north. Smoke curls from the harbor. Ships burn. Some say the Genoese have abandoned you. Others say they fight on the sea still. You don't know what to believe anymore. You only know one thing. This city is dying, and you are still inside it. You push forward through the crush of bodies, past the crumbling colonnades and statues of long-dead emperors. Once, this road had hosted Triumph's golden chariots, cheering crowds, banners waving under blue skies. Now it's nothing but ash and sorrow. A woman collapses beside you. You try to lift her, but her leg is twisted the wrong way. She grabs your sleeve, eyes wide, breath shallow. "Go," she whispers, "just go." You don't argue. There's no time for mercy. Not now. Ahead, the Church of the Holy Apostles comes into view, its domes battered but still standing, its bells ringing wildly. A final call to God. You see people flooding toward it, priests trying to maintain order, lifting icons high above their heads. Some chanting Greek, others in Latin. Everyone is praying to someone. You hear another sound, a low rumble, almost like thunder. Then the walls of the Forum tremble as a cannonball crashes into a nearby building. Dust and screams fill the air. The Ottomans have brought their great guns closer now, smashing the heart of the city from within. It's no longer a siege. It's an execution. You run past the ruins of the old Senate House, once the seat of the Empire's voice. Nothing left but columns snapped like twigs and marble steps painted red. You think of Constantine the 11th, the emperor. Somewhere out there, he's still fighting. You've heard stories that he cast off his imperial robes and fights as a common soldier, that he refuses to flee. You want to believe it. You cling to the image as your legs carry you east, toward the sea walls. Maybe there's a ship. Maybe there's still a way out. Or maybe there's just one last place to make a stand. You reach the Blockernay Quarter, where the city's northern walls kiss the Golden Horn. Here, the fighting is thickest. The Ottomans pour in from multiple breaches, like water through shattered levees. The defenders, whatever remains of them are, scattered, broken into pockets of last resistance. A boy no older than 12 throws stones from a rooftop. Below him, an older man swings a rusted sword like he's never held one before. A nun drags wounded men into a side chapel, her robes torn, her hands slick with blood. You hear a voice calling out Greek, clear, firm, a captain, rallying a group of soldiers around a broken wagon turned into a barricade. You join them, breath heaving, blood on your tunic that may or may not be your own. He nods once and hands you a shield. We hold here. No more running. You plant your feet behind the makeshift wall and grip your weapon tightly. There's silence for a moment. Just the crackle of distant flames. Then a roar. Janissaries. Again. They crash against your line like a tide of fury. You raise your shield impact, pain. You swing blindly, connect with something soft. A scream, a flash of a blade. You duck. Someone beside you falls. But the line holds. You don't know how long it lasts. Seconds, minutes, hours. Time bleeds into itself in battle. Then, a second wave. This one even larger. Arrows rain down like black hail. One catches your thigh. You stagger, fall, crawl back behind the barricade. The captain is gone. You're not sure where or when. But his voice is no longer there. A few others remain, breathing hard, some wounded, all filthy. One begins to sob quietly, covering his face. Still, you rise. Still, you fight. At some point, perhaps mid-morning, perhaps later, it's hard to tell your barricade finally gives way. The Janissaries pour over it like a swarm, relentless and cold. You fall back with the others, dodging between narrow alleyways, past shattered doorways and homes turned into tombs. Smoke burns your lungs. Screams echo from every direction. You duck into a side street, pulling a wounded man along with you. He's missing 3 fingers. Doesn't seem to notice. Keeps mumbling a prayer over and over, lips moving mechanically like a child's bedtime rhyme. You reach a quiet spot, a courtyard overgrown with weeds, hidden behind what used to be a bathhouse. For a moment, there's peace. A column still stands in the center, half split but proud, with ivy curling around its cracks. Birds actual birds circle overhead, unaware or uncaring of the carnage around them. The wounded man dies there, just before the sunlight hits the column. You close his eyes. It feels ceremonial, almost. Like something that should be done. But you don't stay, because you hear the chanting now. It's distant, but rising Latin, not Greek. You follow the sound and soon find yourself outside the Hagia Sophia. The square is packed. Thousands have taken shelter inside the ancient church. Its massive doors are open, and people push to enter, nobles and beggars alike. Women clutching children, priests dragging relics, weeping, shouting. Inside, the mosaics flicker in the glow of candles. Incense clouds the air. It smells like desperation. You don't go in. You can't. There's something in your chest that refuses. Because you know what this moment is. This isn't a refuge. It's a tomb waiting to be sealed. You slip away from the square, ducking beneath a broken archway, and make your way east toward the harbor. Everywhere you turn, Constantinople is bleeding. You pass a row of shop scobblers, bakers, fishmongers all abandoned. Goods still on shelves, loaves of bread going stale, sandals half-stitched, as if their owners had simply vanished. In truth, they probably had taken by swords or fire or panic. You grab a bit of cloth from one of the stalls and tie it around your bleeding thigh. No time for a proper dressing. Then you hear it a horn. Not the Ottoman call, but a ship's bell. Faint, desperate. You follow the sound like a compass. The golden horn opens before you. The chain across the water has been breached. Ships are burning. Others drift listlessly, sails torn, oars dangling. But one galley Venetian maybe still floats near the docks, its crew waving wildly, pulling in survivors. You sprint. The docks are chaos. People shove and scream. A child is nearly trampled. You lift him without thinking, set him on a stack of crates. He clutches your arm, eyes wide. You tell him to hold on, that someone will come. You're not sure if it's true. You reach the edge. The ship is 20 feet out, rope ladder dangling. You dive. The cold water shocks your system, steals your breath. You fight your way to the ladder, grip it with raw fingers, and climb. Hands pull you up. You collapse onto the deck, gasping. The ship turns. As it rows away, you watch the city shrink behind you, its domes wreathed in smoke, its walls crumbling. Somewhere in the haze, a final bell tolls. Constantinople has fallen. The wind catches in the ship's sail. And for the first time in what feels like an eternity, you feel motion not dictated by fear, but by escape. The rhythmic creak of oars, the lapping of water, even the distant sobs around you, all of it blends into a strange, disorienting calm. You sit against the rail, shivering, soaked to the bone. The child you helped earlier is beside you, still clutching your arm, silent now. His face is pale, lips blue, but his eyes haven't left the smoking skyline of the city. You look too. From this distance, Constantinople almost looks peaceful. The great dome of the Hagia Sophia glows amber in the firelight. The towers and spires stand silhouetted against the smoke-darkened sky like grave markers. For a moment, you can almost forget the screams. Almost. A man near you mutters, "Rome has fallen." Again. Another spits into the sea. Nothis was worse. You're too tired to argue, too numb to care. The captain of the ship calls out orders. He's Italian, shouting something about heading to Chios or Rhodes, maybe even Crete. Anywhere that still flies the cross. You hear the word refuge, but it sounds hollow now. You close your eyes, but instead of sleep, your mind replays everything: the broken barricades, the captain's voice, the scream of that man in the alley, the cold steel of the bunker, the boy's quiet prayer, the smells, the sounds, the fear. It all clings to you like a second skin. Someone offers you a cloak. You don't ask their name, you just take it, pull it over your shoulders, and let yourself breathe. The sea stretches endlessly ahead. Behind you, the last remnants of Byzantium burn. Night falls hard over the Aegean. There's no moon, just stars, scattered like ash across the sky. The deck creaks beneath your feet as you pace slowly, quietly among the other survivors. Most are asleep, or pretending to be. The silence is thick, like everyone is holding their breath, afraid to shatter whatever fragile sense of survival still clings to them. You sit down beside a barrel of fresh water and drink. It's warm and tastes of copper, but it's wet. That's all that matters now. The boy is nearby. He hasn't spoken since the harbor. You offer him the last bit of your crust of bread. He takes it, nods once, then curls into a coil of rope like a cat, eyes wide open in the dark. And then an old man begins to hum. Low at first, raspy, almost broken. A Greek hymn, something ancient, something soft. Others begin to join, one voice at a time. No instruments, no rhythm, just breath and memory. You don't know the words, but you hum too. The sea carries the sound. For a moment, you see it in your mind, Constantinople as it once was. Markets alive with color. Scholars debating in candlelit halls. Children playing near aqueducts. Priests chanting beneath mosaics older than kingdoms. All of it gone, but not forgotten. Not yet. You look to the horizon. A thin line of silver begins to break the black. Dawn. And with it, something you never thought you'd feel again. Hope. The sun creeps above the water like a shy guest, casting gold over the waves. For the first time in days now, weeks you feel its warmth on your skin. It's weak, thin, but it's there. People begin to stir. Some stretch, others just sit silently, staring into the distance. You hear soft prayers, a few muffled sobs, but mostly there's quiet. That kind of quiet that comes only after destruction, when even grief feels too heavy to voice. The captain gathers the survivors mid-deck. He's weathered, gray-bearded, speaking in a mix of Latin, Greek, and broken Italian. But the message is clear. Chios is ahead. A few hours, maybe less. He reminds everyone to stay calm, to stay low if the Ottomans patrol the waters. There's always a chance, he says, that they'll be intercepted, that this floating refuge might yet become a prison. But you're too tired to fear again. Whatever happens, you've already seen the worst, and lived. The ship moves steady and true. The boy finally sleeps. You wrap your arm around him, shielding his small form from the salty breeze. Around you, survivors lean on one another. Strangers, now made kin by fire and fate. And you, a witness to the death of an empire, find yourself wondering not what was lost, but what might still be saved. The coastline of Chios rises like a promise from the sea-jagged hills blanketed in olive trees, whitewashed homes hugging the cliffs, and in the harbor, sails bobbing gently like they never knew war. You dock in silence. A few Greek fishermen watch you warily from the shore, unsure whether you bring plague, panic, or peace. The captain disembarks first, speaking in hushed tones to a local official. Papers are exchanged. Names are scribbled. Heads nod. Then he gestures to the rest of you. Feet shuffle on the planks as you step onto land for the first time since the fall. Your knees nearly buckle from the change earth feels foreign after so many days at sea. You're herded toward a small chapel-turned shelter. Inside, straw mats and chipped bowls. A few blankets. A priest blesses the group, touching heads with trembling fingers. Some of the older refugees cry. Others simply collapse onto the floor. Food comes lentils, bread, warm water. It's meager, but to you, it's a feast. The boy beside you chews slowly, staring at the walls like they might vanish at any second. That night, you lie beneath a thin wool blanket in the chapel's corner, staring up at the wooden beams overhead. It smells of incense and damp stone. You're safe, but sleep doesn't come easy. Your ears still expect cannon fire. Your hands still twitch for the weight of a door bracing against invaders. Your dreams twist back into fire, screaming, and the final tolling bells of Hagia Sophia. But through it all, something else begins to return. Not comfort, not joy, not yet, but breath. And with breath, life. Days pass. You learn the rhythms of the island, the morning bells, the shouts of fishermen mending nets, the distant songs of shepherds calling goats through the hills. Chios is poor, battered from years of Ottoman raids, but it's alive, and that feels like a miracle. You begin to help in the kitchen peeling garlic, cleaning lentils, stoking the fire. The boy fetches water from the well each morning, always returning with soaked sleeves and a crooked grin. He's smiling again. That alone feels worth everything. Others from the ship scatter into the village. Some are taken in by local families. Others join a monastery in the hills or find work in the port unloading grain sacks. Slowly, the fragments of Constantinople begin to settle into new lives, like dust finding cracks in old stone. But not all can let go. One Menon's a scholar at the Patriarchate spends his days sitting beneath the olive tree near the chapel, repeating verses from memory. Homer, Aristotle, Gregory of Nazianzus. His voice never rises. He doesn't speak to others, but his recitations anchor something invisible in the space around him. You pass him each day, and he nods, never stopping, as if words are all that keep the world from slipping away completely. And perhaps they do. One evening, the priest approaches you with parchment. He asks you to write or record what happened in Constantinople, what you saw, what you survived. Your hands tremble at first, but then the words come. Not just the horror, the scent of rosewater in the streets, the echo of sandals on marble floors. the lullabies of mothers hiding in basements as cannons roared outside. You write for hours. You're not sure who will ever read it, but that no longer matters. Weeks become months. Winter creeps in, soft at first. The hills of Chios go gray. Rain falls for days without stopping, soaking cloaks and filling boots. In the shelter, the fire burns constantly, fed with driftwood and prayer. The boy's cough returns. You boil thyme and honey, press warm cloths to his chest, and hum the old lullabies of your childhood. Songs from Constantinople. Other survivors grow restless. A few leave for the mainland, hoping to join uprisings against the Ottomans. Rumors swirl of foreign kings planning a crusade-ion last effort to reclaim the Queen of Cities. But most know better. The world has moved on, and still, in the quiet, something strange grows among you. Community. You celebrate Epiphany with the locals. Bake flatbread with cloves. Carve small crosses for the children. The islanders warm to you slowly at first, then all at once. A girl brings you extra figs each morning. An old woman teaches the boy how to stitch his own tunic. You visit the chapel every night now, not always to pray sometimes, just to sit. To feel the silence without fear. To remember names you swore you wouldn't forget. Demetrios, who stayed behind at the gates. Eleni, who hid the icon under her coat. Brother Anastasios, who held the line at the library with nothing but a torch and a hymn. You whisper their names to the icons on the wall, hoping that somewhere, somehow, they're still heard. And one night, as the rain beats like drums on the chapel roof, you feel it. Not openukit, but purpose. Spring returns. The hills of Chios turn green again, vineyards leaf out, and almond trees bloom pale pink along the ridges. The sea loses its winter gray and begins to sparkle beneath the sun. Life, once quiet and uncertain, begins to take on rhythm. You begin teaching letters to the local children, scratching Greek and Latin into the dirt with sticks. You catch the boy correcting your spelling with a smirk, and you laugh for the first time in months. One day, a merchant ship arrives from Venice. The crew brings news. The Ottomans are pushing deeper into the Balkans. Serbia is under pressure. The Maria trembles. But there's talk too of books rescued from Constantinople codices smuggled out, finding their way to Italy. Some even say the scholars who fled are being welcomed in Florence, Naples, Paris. The old world may have fallen, but its light hasn't gone out entirely. The priest gives you a choice. You can remain on Chios, build a life among the olive trees and sheep, marry, teach, plant roots, or you can leave. A Venetian galley is sailing soon for Crete, then onward to the Adriatic. There are whispers that Florence needs scribes, that Rome seeks men who remember the old liturgies, who can write the vanished wisdom of Byzantium before it's lost forever. That night, you walk the coastline beneath the stars, the boy beside you. He's older now months, but it feels like years. His face is thinner, his eyes sharper. He looks out over the sea and says nothing. You ask what he wants. To stay. He replies without hesitation. But if you go, I'll go too. You don't answer right away. Instead, you sit together on the cold stone ledge, watching the moon ripple across the Aegean. 2 days later, you pack your things. Not much a worn icon of St. Demetrios, a tiny silver cross, a bundle of letters wrapped in oilcloth, the boy's drawings, and a few loaves of bread for the journey. The villagers come to see you off. Some embrace you, some simply nod. The old woman who taught the boy to stitch presses a pouch of dried figs into your hand without a word. You try to thank her, but the words don't come. The priest meets you at the docks. His beard is white now, though the winter was short. You carry something important, he tells you, gesturing to your chest knot to the icon, but to the place just behind it. What you remember, what you've lived, that's worth more than you think. You board the galley as the sails are hoisted. The boy stands beside you at the railing. The wind carries the scent of salt and oranges. As the island recedes behind you, he asks the question you've both been avoiding. What happens next? You don't know. But you begin to tell him a story about a city of marble domes, of scholars who whispered secrets into manuscripts, of mosaics that caught the sun like fire, about a place where bells once rang from every tower and incense floated through streets. You don't say its name. You don't need to. The boy listens, eyes wide. And for the first time in a long time, you realize you aren't telling the story to remember what was lost, but to plant it in someone else. The wind grows stronger as the ship cuts westward through the Aegean, sails full and snapping, salt spray on your cheeks. The boy stands at the prow now, arms braced, eyes searching the horizon like it might answer him. You watch him, quietly marveling at the change. Just months ago, he was trembling in the ruins, clinging to your robes like a shadow. Now, he's solid, taller too, not just in body, but in presence. There is no destination written in stony-only names etched into rumor. Corfu, Candia, Florence. You've heard whispers of a monk in Italy translating the old Greek philosophers, of a Medici banker paying fortunes for lost scrolls, of an artist sketching domes in the shadow of fallen ones. In your satchel, the scrolls you saved from the monastery of the Pantocrator remain dry, bound in waxed cloth. Not many. A handful of prayers. A commentary on Aristotle. One fragment of Archimedes you still haven't deciphered. But in the right hands, even a fragment is a seed. And seed sun-like stones grow. The boy approaches, holding out a scrap of paper. On it, he's drawn a map. Not of the world as it is, but as he imagines it. Constantinople rebuilt. Churches whole. Gardens blooming on the rooftops. Ships in the harbor again. You smile, then trace the path of a ship sailing from the city's Golden Horn to the unknown. To Florence. He grins. And you realize this isn't just exile anymore. It's a beginning. The days blur. You pass Delos, its marble ruins ghostly in the dawn light. Naxos, where fishermen wave from the shore. Crete, where Venetian galleys crowd the harbors like iron fish. At night, the boy falls asleep beneath a tarp stretched across barrels, the stars wheeling overhead. You stay awake most nights, copying the old texts by lamplight. Hand-cramped, ink thin. You pause, often not out of weariness, but reverence. Every word feels sacred now. Not just the prayers and proverbs, but even the marginalia, the little notes scribbled by some long-dead scribe. The monk at the next desk snores. I copied this during the reigns of 1292. May the Lord forgive my poor handwriting. You smile at these voices from the past. They are echoes of real lives people like you, trying to preserve something, to leave a mark before the world forgets them. One night, off the coast of Zakynthos, a storm rises. The sea turns black and wild. The galley lurches and groans. Men shout. The boy clings to a rope, eyes wide with terror. You crawl across the deck, clutch him, hold fast to the mast. Lightning flashes sand for a second. You see Constantinople again. The dome of Hagia Sophia split by fire. The library's walls collapsed. The smell of smoke and salt. But when the light fades, it's just the sea again. The boy, alive, heart hammering beside yours. You whisper a prayer, not for safety, but for memory. By morning, the sea is calm again, like the storm never happened. The crew is silent, shaken. One man weeps softly, carving a cross into the mast. Another smokes without speaking, staring at the horizon like it betrayed him. You and the boys sit near the stern, sharing what's left of the bread. It's stale and damp, but you eat anyway. He looks up at you, hesitant. Were you ever afraid, back then? You think of the siege, the hunger, the thunder of cannon on stone, the screams that never seemed to end? Yes, you say. Often. He nods, as if that answer somehow steadies him. He pulls out one of his Skachiza tower, a courtyard, fig trees in bloom. He's been drawing the city as you describe it, piece by piece. It's not perfect, he says, frowning. You study the lines. They're not perfect, no, but they're alive. You drew this from memory? You ask. He shakes his head. From your stories. Your throat tightens. You look out over the sea so he doesn't see it in your face. He's never seen Constantinople. And yet, here it is, in charcoal and parchment, held in the hands of someone who never walked its streets. Maybe that's what survival really means. Not just living through something, but making sure it isn't lost. Later that week, the ship docks at a small port on the western coast of Greece. The captain needs fresh water, the crew needs rest, and you need a scriptorium. Not that such things are common anymore. Most monasteries here were abandoned or ransacked decades ago. Still, there are whispers of monks hiding in the hills, of scrolls tucked behind false walls, of knowledge smuggled out of Constantinople before the final breach. You and the boy disembark. The air is heavy with olives and dust. Goats bleat from somewhere up the hillside. A child eyes you warily, then disappears behind a crumbling wall. By midday, you find what you're looking for. A chapel so small and overgrown it looks more like a shed than a sanctuary. But inside behind the altar, past cobwebs and faded icons, you discover a narrow stairwell descending into darkness. The boy lights a lamp. You follow him down. Beneath the chapel, the air turns cool and dry. Shelves line the stone walls. On them, books, dozens of them. Leather-bound, wax-sealed, some barely legible. You run your fingers across the spines, murmuring titles to yourself. Apollonius of Rhodes, Ptolemy's Geography, Galen. Many are damaged. Some are unsalvageable. But even one line rescued from oblivion is a victory. You look at the boy. He's smiling. And you realize he understands it now. This isn't just about escape. It's about resurrection. You spend days in that cellar. By day, you clean and catalog the text-brushing mold from pages, stitching torn bindings, copying what you can before the ink fades for good. The boy sketches diagrams from old medical treatises and maps drawn centuries before Christ. By night, you sleep among the scrolls, wrapped in musty linens, surrounded by the scent of wax, parchment, and time. One morning, as dawn filters through the cracks in the ceiling, you find a book bound in red leather. It's not in Greek. You recognize Latin de Re Militaria Roman manual on the art of war. Margins filled with notes, some written in medieval French, others in the hurried Greek of a scholar in flight. You turn the page. A name. Ioannis Doukas. 1453. One of yours. A fellow guardian of words. He must have escaped during the siege, carrying this book with him, scrawling thoughts into its margins while Constantinople fell behind him. He wrote not for himself, but for someone like you, someone who might find it centuries later and remember. You run your fingers over his words. And in that moment, across oceans of time, you feel less alone. The boy reads the marginalia aloud, his voice hushed, reverent. He who preserves memory wages war against oblivion. He pauses, looking up at you. What does it mean? You lean back against the stone wall, eyes fixed on the flickering lamplight. You've asked yourself the same question more times than you can count. It means history isn't just about what happened, you say. It's about what we choose not to forget. He nods slowly, absorbing the weight of it. Then he sets down the book and begins to draw again, not a battle scene this time, but a monk in a dark cellar, holding a lamp over an open page. It's you chuckle. Be sure to draw more hair next time, he grins. That's artistic license. But as he sketches, you realize something. One day, someone might find his drawings, and through them, through this strange, quiet journey, your story will keep living. And so will Constantinople. That afternoon, thunder rumbles over the hills. Rain lashes the chapel roof above, seeping between the stone cracks. But down here, the texts stay dry safe, cocooned in silence. You copy frantically by lamplight, each word a rescue. Some texts are too damaged to read, their ink long dissolved into the fibers. Others contain secrets not seen in centuries. Forgotten trade routes, ancient recipes for preserving food, prayers written in hybrid tongues half Latin, half Greek born of desperate mingling during the empire's last breath. Then you find a scrap tucked inside a hollowed-out hymnal. A note. Written by a trembling hand, it simply says, "If you are reading this, then perhaps all is not lost." You sit with that sentence for a long time, not just reading it, answering it, because across fire, across war, across a continent soaked in blood and silence, someone dared to believe you might exist, that someone would come looking, and here you are. The rain continues for hours. It drums softly above, like distant hoofbeats, like memory. The boy dozes beside a crate of scrolls, his coat pulled over him, one hand still resting on his notebook. You glance over and see he's drawn another picture this time of Constantinople's walls, imagined as they must have looked before the siege. Proud, tall, defiant against the tides of time. You smile. Then you turn back to your work. There's one codex left unopened. Its cover is warped, its edges singed. But when you pry it open, your breath catches. It's a copy of the Chronicle of Theophanisa, record of emperors, eclipses, famines, and faith. Thought lost during the Latin sack centuries ago. But this one is annotated in a trembling script. Someone had been updating it, keeping the chronicle going long after its final entry. The last note is dated April 1453, a month before the city fell. You trace the line with your finger, the city trembles, the stars hide their faces. But I write, because I must. If nothing survives but this page, let it say, "We tried." Your eyes sting. You close the codex gently, and for the first time in years, you allow yourself to cry. You don't sob. It's quiet. A release. The kind of tears born not from grief, but from recognition. That sentence, "We tried," lodges deep within you. More powerful than any victory, more enduring than any empire. Because in that single moment, penned by a stranger nearly 5 centuries ago, you feel a kinship stronger than blood. Across the abyss of history, someone reached out and you caught their hand. You breathe in the damp cellar air. Oil, wax, dust, old paper. It smells like memory, like defiance, like hope. When the boy stirs awake, blinking against the lantern light, you hand him the codex. He reads the passage silently, then clutches the book to his chest. "Do we keep going?" he asks. You nod. "We finish the story." And so you do. The hours pass unnoticed. Outside, the storm begins to wane, but inside this quiet tomb of parchment and purpose, the real storm is just beginning to settle. You and the boy work like monks of old. He copies diagrams and symbols. You translate lines of fading Latin and Greek. Every page saved is a brick placed back in a wall no one else remembers. You begin to whisper the names you find: emperors, scholars, forgotten cartographers as if reciting prayers. The boy joins in, a litany of the nearly lost. Zonaras, Anna Komnene, Michael Sellos, Cassiodorus, Hypatia. A ritual of sorts, binding the dead to the living. Then, in a drawer long sealed with wax, you find a map. Not just any mapone drawn by hand, ink faded but legible. It shows the city not as it fell, but as it once was. Detailed, reverent, landmarks labeled in a careful Byzantine minuscule. Hagia Sophia, the Mise, the Forum of Constantine. At the top, a short phrase, "To be found again." You press your palm to the page. You found it. The boy leans over your shoulder, eyes wide. "Is it real?" he whispers. You don't answer right away. You trace the streets on the map with your finger, avenues long buried, churches now only footnotes, palaces ground to dust. But here, on this page, they still breathe. "Yes," you say finally. "It's real. At least it was." He nods solemnly, as if being let in on a secret too big for most to carry. You roll the map carefully and tuck it into a protective scroll case. This one won't be left behind. Not again. Above you, the storm has passed. A golden light begins to filter through the cracks in the stone, casting long shadows across the room. Dust dances in the beams like ancient spirits finally exhaling. You gather the last of the manuscripts into a crate. The boy steadies it, arms braced. Your muscles ache, your eyes burn, but your heart? Steady, anchored, clear. Because you're not just preserving history, you're giving it a second life. Together, you carry the crate up the narrow stone steps, each footfall echoing like a drumbeat of the past and present colliding. The boy grunts with effort, slipping once. You catch the edge of the box, steadying both him and the precious weight it carries. He flashes a sheepish smile, and you nod in return, not just in reassurance, but in recognition. He's not just helping. He understands now. The door creaks open. The air outside is sharp with rain, but fresh like the earth has been scrubbed clean. Across the courtyard, the city awakens in muted tones. Vendors reset their stalls. Birds flit between cathedral spires. Children chase each other through puddles with wooden swords, pretending to be emperors or rebels. None the wiser to the true battle you've just waged and won. You load the crate into the back of your cart. The map is tucked inside your coat, close to your heart. As you cinch the straps, the boy tugs at your sleeve. What happens now? You look to the horizon, where sunlight kisses the crumbling domes. Now, you say softly, we tell the world what it forgot. And together, you set off carrying centuries in silence toward the next forgotten story. The wheels rattle over broken cobblestones as you leave the monastery behind. That ancient vault now a little emptier, but the world, somehow a little fuller. The boy sits beside you, watching the rooftops pass by, holding the map like a relic. Not just parchment, but possibility. A symbol that history isn't just what survives, it's what we choose to remember. As the city unfolds around you, something else becomes clear. The past never stays buried. It lingers in the tilt of a tower rebuilt too many times, in the carved lintel above a forgotten door, in a street name worn illegible by centuries of footsteps. You begin to see the ghost of the city beneath the city, a second layer beneath the modern noise. A dog barks in a language older than nations. A baker whistles an Ottoman tune, and you realize this was never about rescuing dusty pages. It was about rescuing us. Because when we forget who we were, we lose who we are. And when we preserve the voices of the past, no matter how faint, we anchor ourselves to something deeper than time. The boy doesn't speak. He just leans his head against your shoulder. And the cart keeps rolling. By midday, the sun hangs overhead like a watchful eye, and the city begins to hum louder market stalls shouting prices, street performers juggling history for coins, and somewhere, a church bell tolling noon like it has for 600 years. You steer the cart through a narrow lane, past a Roman arch now hemmed in by brutalist concrete, past a fountain where revolutionaries were once executed, and now children splash in circles. The map burns gently against your chest, not from heat but from meaning. Every step, every creak of the wheels feels like resistance. Against forgetting, you pause at a quiet plaza, the kind most pass by without a glance. But you remember this square. You studied it once. It was once called the Square of Ashes, where banned books were burned, where language was outlawed, where memory itself had been put to the torch. And yet now, a couple eats pastries on a bench, completely unaware. You kneel, brush aside the leaves near the base of an old statue. The plaque is gone, corroded away. But you whisper the name anyway. Il circolo delle lettere. The boy kneels beside you. What does it mean? You smile. The circle of letters. Henot solemnogen. And in that moment, you know if even one person remembers, truly remembers, then it wasn't erased. The afternoon stretches long and golden as you and the boy push the cart onward, winding beyond the city's edge. Brick becomes gravel. Gravel becomes dirt. The noise fades behind you, swallowed by wind and birdsong. The road ahead bends toward the hills green now, but once the bloodied front line of some long-forgotten conflict, you don't tell the boy that. Not yet. Let the silence of the countryside soften him before the next story sharpens. At a rise, you stop. Below lies the valley lush, dotted with cypress and crumbling stone, and nestled deep at its heart, a weathered manor half swallowed by ivy. The Institute? Not a university. Not anymore. More like a sanctuary for stories too stubborn to die. You both descend slowly. The boy walks ahead now, eager. His hands tighten around the crate. You don't stop him. You let him be the one to carry it through the gates. Let him offer it up at the archivist's desk. Let him speak the names. The archivista woman with white hair and ink-stained fingers examines the documents, then glances at you. "No one's brought anything from that region in decades," she says softly. "Wasn't easy," you reply. She smiles, then gestures toward a corridor. "Come." The boy follows her. You stay back, watching as the heavy doors swing open, revealing rows upon rows of shelves, each scroll, journal, and scrap of parchment a survivor. He disappears inside, swallowed by history. And for the first time in a long time, you exhale. Not because the work is done, but because someone else has just begun. The sun begins its slow descent, painting the sky in soft oranges and muted pinks. You sit on a worn stone bench outside the Institute, the kind smoothed by centuries of cloaked philosophers, frantic scholars, forgotten revolutionaries. From inside, faint echo pages turning, soft voices reciting dead languages now reborn in a child's tongue. You close your eyes. You hear the boy asking questions. Not about kings or dates, but about people. What they feared, what they dreamed, what they ate for breakfast. The archivist laughs, delighted. She answers with a patience that comes from knowing how rare this is. A young mind, not seeking power or praise, but connection. A breeze brushes against your cheek, carrying with it the faint scent of lavender and dust. And suddenly, you remember the words of a poet whose name history almost forgot. A nation is not its flag or anthem. It is its stories, spoken at bedtime, passed in kitchens, buried in fields. You rise from the bench, not because you must, but because the journey continues. Not north, not south, deeper, deeper into the past, deeper into the meaning, deeper into the quiet, defiant belief that memory like truth might still outlive time. And as you step through the door to join the boy, to carry another box, to find another name, you realize this is not just a history. It's a lullaby against forgetting, and you're not ready to sleep just yet. Inside the Institute's vaulted halls, the quiet is absolute, so thick it muffles even your footsteps. Light spills from arched windows, dappled and golden, catching the motes of dust that hang suspended like stars in slow orbit. You walk slowly, reverently, as the boy leads you deeper through the labyrinth of knowledge. To your left, shelves marked Carthage to Constantinople. To your right, revolutionary failures and unsolved uprisings. Somewhere overhead, an ancient pipe groans, echoing like the breath of a sleeping giant. Then, at the heart of it all, you reach the chamber, a room so old the floor sags with memory. Here, laid carefully across a table of ironwood, rests today's subject, a leather-bound journal, its edges warped by cold, its pages brittle and brown. You both lean in. The boy's fingers hover just above the paper, not touching, never touching, but close enough that you can feel the anticipation radiating from his skin. You open to the first page. Ink faded but legible. July 1931, Nautilus expedition. Under the command of Sir Hubert Wilkins, somewhere beneath the Arctic ice. A long silence follows. The boy looks up. They really lived in that thing? You nod slowly. Some of them died in it too. And with that, the journey begins again. The journal smells of mildew and machine oil. A strange mix, but fitting. You turn the page, careful not to tear the fragile sheet. The next entry begins abruptly, as though the writer had been interrupted mid-thought. Pressure gauge read wrong again. Men uneasy. Ice overhead is thicker than planned. You can almost hear the groan of the submarine's hull, metal flexing under unimaginable weight. You glance at the boy. He's leaning closer, caught in the spell of the moment. You read on, Lost communication with surface. Morse tap broken. Wilkins says it's temporary. No one believes him. And then, scrawled in the margin, small and almost frantic, someone's teeth are chattering too loudly to sleep. You pause. The silence between you and the boy is heavy now. He doesn't look away from the page. You think they were scared? He whispers. You don't answer right away. Instead, you let the next words from the journal speak for themselves. Not scared of dying. Scared of dying alone. In the dark. With no sun to mark the day. Just the cold. And the creaks. Another pause. Then the boy exhales and says quietly, "Let's keep going." You do. The next page is stained possibly seawater, or maybe coffee from an unsteady hand. The handwriting is messier now, slanted, rushed. August 3rd. Forward ballast tanks jammed. We're drifting lower, ice still above us, no clear way out. You glance up, imagining it. A steel coffin sinking beneath layers of ice so thick. Sunlight becomes a rumor. The boy shifts beside you, arms wrapped around himself despite the summer warmth outside. One of the crew Mackie says he hears the ice moaning at night. Not wind, ice, like it knows we're here. You both fall still. You can feel the cold creeping in. Captain Wilkins gave a speech today, said we're making history, said no one's ever done this before. A small pause between lines. Of course not. No one's been stupid enough to try. You smirk slightly. The boy doesn't laugh just, blinks slowly, imagining a room full of men listening to that speech, knowing full well they were part of an experiment. An experiment with no margin for error. You turn the page again. Rations low. Still no clear exit route. Crew fights over dried biscuits and the last tin of meat. It's not hunger yet, just almost. You look at the boy. Ever been that hungry? He shakes his head. Not like that. You don't press further. There's more to read. August 4th. Engineer says oxygen scrubbers are struggling. Air's turning heavy. Breathing feels thick. You pause for a moment, subconsciously taking a deeper breath, as if the words alone made the room feel smaller. Told the men to keep calm. Hard to do when you're gasping between sentences. The boy leans his head on his arms now, eyes focused on the flickering candle beside the journal. You can tell he's no longer just hearing the story. He's in it now, feeling it. Lights flicker more often. We ration battery power, but the dark creeps in all the same. Jenkins keeps murmuring prayers under his breath. I didn't peg him as religious. You both sit in silence for a second until the boy asks, "Do you think they really believed they'd make it?" You glance at the candle. The flame's steady. "I think they had to," you say. You turn another page. Morale low. Men avoid eye contact. Too quiet. Too many thoughts. Sound carries too well in the steel walls. No secrets in the Nautilus. Wilkins says we're days from the pole. I say we're days from madness. The ink here is smeared. A drop of water, a shaking hand, or both. August 5th. We tried surfacing again. Ice is too thick. The conning tower scraped ice loud enough to wake the whole crew. There was silence afterward. Not relief. Just silence. Like we were waiting for something to respond from above. You and the boy both look up instinctively, as if expecting creaking ice above your own heads. It's irrational. But that's how the mind works in stories like this. Or in submarines. The doctor handed out sleeping powders, said it would help, but I saw him take two himself. You feel a shift in the room's air as you turn the page. The next entry is written shakier. More space between the lines. A man unraveling. August 6th. Jenkins snapped. Screamed about voices in the pipes. Said the boat was talking to him. We had to restrain him. He begged us not to make him sleep. The doctor said he's just exhausted. But I see it in the other's eyes. He wasn't alone in hearing it. You swallow, your mouth suddenly dry. The boy whispers, "What would you do?" You shake your head slowly. Depends how loud the pipes get. August 7th. Batteries nearly drained. Lights out for hours. We light lanterns when needed, but the shadows move wrong in this place. They stretch too long. They sway when there's no motion. The hull creaks more, like it's breathing or warning us. You read that last line again. The boy shifts closer. Neither of you speaks. We're low on fresh water. Condensation doesn't collect fast enough. Wilkins says not to panic. That word is losing meaning down here. Someone broke into the emergency rations. Captain's furious. No one confessed. We all have our suspects. You sigh. It's always the hunger that comes first. You say softly. The boy nods. Then what? You look at the next page. You don't answer. You just read. August 8th. We surfaced, briefly. Sky gray, endless. Ice for miles. No land. No birds. Just white. And silence. We took turns gasping fresh air through a narrow hatch. Jenkins laughed, like he was born again. But we had to dive again. The ice was drifting, cracking. We almost didn't submerge in time. We're trapped under something that doesn't care we exist. August 9th. We lost power mid-dive. The lights died. For a minute, we all thought it was the end. Total darkness. No sound but our breathing and the groaning of steel. Then the emergency lights flickered on, red and dim like the inside of a dying star. You glance at the boy, he's gripping his blanket now. No one spoke for hours. Not even Wilkins. What's left to say? The silence isn't just around us anymore. It's inside us. In our heads. Filling every pause. You continue reading. August 10th. One of the men Fowler says he saw something outside the viewport. We told him it was ice. Just refraction. But he swore it moved. He won't sleep now. Just stares at the glass. Says it's watching us. The boy's eyes are wide now. He whispers, "What do you think he saw?" You close the journal slightly and speak just above a whisper. In a place that deep, that cold, that forgotten by the sun, sometimes it's not about what's there. It's about what your mind needs to be there. You open the book again. August 11th. Hull pressure rising. Gauges showing strain. We're not meant to stay submerged this long. Sometimes I think I hear knocking from the other side. August 12th. We've started rationing air. It's not official. No orders were given. But we all breathe slower now. Fewer words, shorter steps, as if movement itself is theft. The lights dimmed again. Battery failure creeping back. Wilkins says we surface tomorrow, but the ice above is thick, unpredictable. I caught myself whispering a prayer today. I don't pray. The boy curls deeper into his blanket. You feel it too, that creeping sense of claustrophobia, of steel walls pressing in from every direction. August 13th. Someone screamed in their sleep. Set the rest of us off. Half the crew woke with their fists up, swinging at shadows. Jenkins had a knife. Thought he was being attacked. No one got hurt. But now we take turns watching him. I looked in the mirror today. I barely recognized myself. My eyes look hollow, like the light inside is fading. You lower the journal for a second. The room around you feels too still. The hum of the real world your fan. A distant car feels like a lifeline. And yet, you want to know what happens next. So you read on. August 14th. The captain tried surfacing. Ice blocked us in. We scraped along the underside. It sounded like the world was ripping in half. No way up. Not yet. We wait again. I think the cold is getting into our bones now. Not just our body, sis. Who we are. I've forgotten what warm feels like. I found a photo in my locker. My sister. I couldn't remember her name at first. August 15th. The walls sweat now. Condensation runs in rivulets, dripping constantly. Every surface is slick. The floor, our clothes, even the pages of this journal. One of the engineers says we've sprung a micro leak in the aft ballast tank. Not dangerous yet, but it's just one more whisper from the sea that we're not welcome here. The men are quieter, not scared numb. There's a difference. Someone plays harmonica at night. Just a few notes. It echoes strangely through the hull, like the submarine is sighing. Wilkins still holds the line, still charts courses, still speaks of glory, but his hands shake when he thinks we're not looking. August 16th. The smell is different today. Something fouler, more rotten. Could be the rations, or something deeper mold in the vents. Corrosion in the pipes, decay in the soul. Jenkins hasn't spoken in 2 days. He just stares at the ice through the periscope. He says it's alive now, that it's listening. I laughed. I don't think I'll laugh again. The boy doesn't say anything now. He's not even blinking. You wonder if you should stop, but you can't. Not yet. The journal is a Trappets Inc., a slow, dark gravity, pulling you down into its depths. August 17th. We tried again to surface. Failed again. The conning tower scraped something? Ice? Or something beneath it? I had a dream. The sea opened up. Not like water, but like a mouth. August 18th. We've started marking days on the wall beside the mess. 27 tally marks. No one knows if they're accurate anymore. Time is a soft thing here like breath in cold air. You see it for a second, then it's gone. Wilkins called a meeting. Told us to prepare for emergency surfacing tomorrow, that the ice is thinning. I wanted to believe him, but he didn't meet our eyes. Morale is threadbare. Some men won't sleep, others won't wake unless shaken. The boundaries of day and night, Argonanly fatigue remains. I caught Jenkins whispering to the pipes again. He says they answer him now. August 19th. The emergency surface failed. We breached a cavity in the ice. Open water above, but something jammed. The ballast failed to rise fully. The opening passed us by. I heard Wilkins scream, just once, a sharp, raw noise. It scared me more than the silence. The air smells worse, like metal and mold and desperation. Someone passed out near the engine room. We dragged him to the bunks. He was cold to the touch, but still breathing. He woke up asking for his mother. He's 42. You realize your breath has slowed, not by choice. The writing is beginning to pull you into its rhythm-short lines. Shallow breathing, slow descent. Just like the crew. August 20th. The lights flicker more often now. Sometimes they go out for minutes. We've taken to carrying oil lamps, but they cast strange shadows on the walls. Faces where there are none. Eyes in the metal. No one talks about the sound anymore. We all hear it scraping, low and distant, like something dragging claws across the hull. Wilkins has stopped writing in the official log. He keeps a private one now. He says it's to keep morale high. I think it's to protect history from the truth. We eat in silence. We breathe in rhythm. The sub has become a single body. Sick, cold, and aware. August 21st. One of the crew tried to open the emergency hatch today. We stopped him. Barely. He said there was light above, that he saw the sun. But it's night. It's always night now. The walls are sweating blood. Not real blood, but rust. It weeps down from rivets, pools at our feet. Some of the crew whisper it's the submarine bleeding with us. I tried to read a Bible passage aloud this morning. My voice cracked. No one looked up. August 2020. A pipe burst in the torpedo room. Salt water flooded in. We managed to seal it, but not before 2 crewmen were trapped knee-deep in ice water for hours. They won't speak, they just shiver. I don't know if it's from cold or something else. Wilkins made a joke at dinner. Something about ice in the scotch. No one laughed. I think he's breaking. I think we all are. August 23rd. I dreamed I was outside the sub, walking on the sea floor in my uniform. No helmet, no suit, just breathing salt water like air. When I woke, my boots were soaked. No one believes me, but they were wet. I touched them. The men speak less now. There's a heavy silence, like the kind before someone screams. One crewman began humming today, over and over. A lullaby none of us knew. He didn't stop for hours. Wilkins had him sedated. Said it was to let the others rest. August 24th. A new crack in the hull. Small, but growing. It lets in a thin whistle of air. We plug it with rags, tools, anything. I watched the metal warp today. Just a little. Just enough to know we're not safe. The cold is deeper now. Not just in the air, but in the thoughts. Some of the crew talk about surfacing again. But there's nowhere to go. Just ice above. Ice and pressure and the slow crush of time. August 25th. We've stopped marking the days. Not because we forgot, but because remembering hurts. I found Jenkins crying. He said the submarine is speaking to him, telling him stories from before he was born. He says it knows his name. The rest of us just pretend not to hear the voices. But we all do. August 26th. I caught myself whispering to the engine today. Not praying, not checking gauges, just talking, she hummed back. Low, steady, warm for a moment. Like she liked it. Someone left bread on the floor near the rudder controls. It had teeth marks. Human teeth. But no one admits to being hungry enough for that. We haven't seen the stars in weeks. Not that we could from down here, but we used to dream about them. Now no one even mentions the sky. August 27th. Wilkins gave a speech this morning. Said we're heroes. Said we'll be remembered. I don't want to be remembered. I want to forget. He sounded calm. Too calm. Like he knew something we didn't. Afterward, he locked himself in the command room. We can hear him pacing. One of the crew saw something in the periscope. He screamed. Said there was a figure in the ice, staring back. No one else looked. We were too afraid it might still be there. August 28th. Food is running low. We count the cans every morning. Just a few left. We ration, but someone always eats more. We don't accuse anymore. We just stare at each other, chewing slower. The sound is louder now. Not a scrape, but a throb. Like a heartbeat from the ocean itself. I touched the hull. It pulsed beneath my fingers. August 29th. We surfaced. Or tried to. The ice above is thicker than we thought. Wilkins called it an uncharted ceiling. We rammed it once. Just once. The noise it made. Not like ice breaking. Like something hollow being struck. We're trapped beneath a frozen roof, and the pressure is rising. The gauges don't lie. But maybe we do. We keep saying it'll be fine. That help is coming. But no one knows where we are. Not even Wilkins. He stopped marking the map days ago. August 30th. The dreams are spreading. Same themes, same voices. Men whisper in their sleep and wake up screaming. Someone wrote a name on the wall in Greece. None of us recognize it. Mara. Over and over. There's a knocking on the hull now. Rhythmic. Measured. We thought it might be ice shifting until it repeated a pattern. Tre knocks. Pause. Two knocks. Pause. One knock. Then again. And again. Someone or something is out there. Answering us. August 31st. We tried to ignore it. But today, someone knocked back. Wilkins lost it. Shouted at everyone to stop. To stay quiet. But the knocks came anyway. This time, they were inside. I looked at the floor. The condensation had pooled into letters. Help me. Written in water. September 1st. We've stopped keeping watches. What's the point when time isn't real anymore? Someone says it's been weeks. Someone else swears only days. The clocks on board have all frozen at different times. Each one a quiet little lie. The humming from the engine has changed pitch. Not louder, deeper. Lower than what a human throat could make. Sometimes it sounds like it's speaking, just beneath the range of understanding. I caught myself trying to hum along. Bennett cracked this morning. Started laughing at nothing. He said we were already under the ice before we ever left New York. Said this whole expedition was just a memory we're trapped inside. We tied him to his bunk after he tried to open the emergency hatch. No one could look him in the eye. September 20th. I had a dream I was outside the submarine, walking along the ice. Not on top beneath it. I could breathe. I wasn't cold. I saw the ship from outside. It was glowing, like it wanted me to come in. When I woke up, my hands were soaked, but not with sweat, with seawater. We haven't moved in days, or maybe we've been moving constantly and can't tell. The compass spins like a top whenever we check it. Someone suggested throwing it overboard, but there's no up, no down, just metal, ice, and pressure. September 3rd. Someone's gone. Hamish. His bunk was empty this morning. No sign of struggle, no waterlogged boots on the floor. Just gone. The hatch was sealed. We counted everyone last night. He was here. Wilkins called a meeting, said we must remain calm, that hallucinations are normal under these conditions. But he looked pale, and when he sat down he whispered, "First one's taken. It always starts like this." I found Hamish's notebook. Scribbles mostly. Repeated phrases. One stood out, "The cold remembers." What does that mean? Who taught him that? September 4th. The ice creaks like bones cracking. It sings at night, a low, resonant tone, like a chorus from beneath the seafloor. We used to dread silence. Now we miss it. Men don't speak unless they have to. We communicate in nods, glances, scribbled notes. One man tried to smile today. It looked like a grimace. He stopped halfway through, like he forgot how. The knocking returned, this time from every direction, not just on the hull but inside the walls. It doesn't echo, it surrounds, like we're inside something that's knocking on us. September 5th, 2 more gone. Leary and Finch. No signs, no noise. They were there during evening rations. Gone by morning. Their bunks looked slept in, warm even, but empty. We've sealed the compartments. Rigged emergency lights. It's laughable, really. As if light can stop whatever this is. Wilkins doesn't speak much now. He stays in the command room. I think he's writing letters no one will ever read. Someone whispered that the Nautilus is feeding. That it's not a submarine anymore. It's alive. I nearly slapped him. Then I realized I'd thought the same thing yesterday. The humming's changed again. It harmonizes with the groans of the ice. Sometimes it mimics voices. Last night, I heard my mother calling me to dinner. She's been dead 10 years. We've stopped using names. It's easier not to get attached. Easier when someone vanishes. September 6th, I caught my reflection in the control panel window. It didn't match my movements. It blinked when I didn't. It smiled when I frowned. The cold doesn't feel like cold anymore. It's not even discomfort, it's presence. Like it's watching, waiting, testing. September 7th, half the crew is gone. They don't scream. There are no thuds. Just empty bunks, empty boots. Whispers in rooms that no longer echo. We don't talk about the missing. Saying their names might call attention. Someone tried to write a prayer on the condensation of the engine room door. It melted before the last word. The phrase, "the ice remembers," has now replaced our usual reports. It's scrawled in grease, scratched in the walls, whispered like a mantra. We tried surfacing today. The controls wouldn't respond. Instruments showed open water above us. But the hull made a sound like a sigh hand, then locked us back into silence. It's not a malfunction. It's a decision. Wilkins finally spoke this morning. He said, "We've gone deeper than the maps, beyond what was meant to be reached." Then he lit a cigarette, stared into the gauge and muttered, "It's awake. What does it want? Memory? Worship? Obedience? Or are we just a story it wants to tell itself again and again until someone listens?" September 8th. No lights now. Power failed at 317. The emergency batteries drained in minutes, not hours. Minutes. The glow from the sonar screen returned, but none of us turned it on. Something's broadcasting through it. Not signals, shapes, faces, hours, but not quite. I heard tapping on the hull today. Morse code. I swear it was my own handwriting. I never learned Morse, but I understood it. We tried to destroy the radio. It turned back on before the pieces hit the floor. Now it only plays one sound. A heartbeat. I haven't seen the stars in days. I'm not even sure we're still on Earth. A deckhand pointed at the pressure gauge and said, "That's not pressure, that's breathing." Sleep doesn't help anymore. Dreams bleed into waking life. I saw my bunkmate's face stretch like wax last night. When I woke, he wasn't there. Just melted sheets. No blood. Just steam. We don't die here. We dissolve. September 9th. We've stopped keeping official logs. What's the point? Dates slip. Clocks stall. The Nautilus has made her own calendar. Yesterday lasted 47 hours. Today blinked by in 3. Someone found a door where there was no door before. Bolted shut. Painted over. Behind it we heard music? A music box playing a lullaby none of us learned, but all of us knew. The mess hall's spoons are bending inward now. Cups empty themselves. A ration can floated midair for 2 seconds before dropping. The new guy laughed, then choked, then never laughed again. Wilkins hasn't eaten in days. Doesn't blink anymore either. When he stares at you, it feels like he's measuring you for something. A casket, maybe. Or a ritual. We found seaweed in someone's lungs during last night's emergency surgery. We haven't surfaced. We haven't opened a hatch. And yet there it was wet green and pulsing like a heartbeat. One man locked himself in the torpedo bay. Said he was safer with the dead metal than the breathing corridors. He was right. He's the only one who slept peacefully last night. September 10th. I tried writing a letter to my wife today. The paper crumbled into salt. The ink floated midair before vanishing into my skin. My fingertips still sting. The walls are sweating blood now, not a metaphor. It smells like rust, but the medic says it clots. He bandaged the wall this morning. He wasn't joking. There's a man in the reflection that doesn't exist in the room. He watches from the mirror-polished pipes. Every time we wipe them, his smile gets wider. We stopped using names. Too risky. You say someone's name, they disappear within the hour. We call each other by numbers now. I'm 6. I don't remember who one was. An alarm went off this morning. None of the dials moved. It just screamed for 47 minutes. Afterward, the ship was colder, like something had left or entered. The captain's log is now writing itself. We tried to burn it. The flames froze. Page 713 said, "The crew accepts its fate. The deep remembers them fondly." The deep remembers us? We never wanted to be remembered. We just wanted to survive the ice, not be devoured by it. September 11th. We surfaced today. Or so we thought. Periscope showed sky, but not our sky. No stars. Just a ceiling of ice with veins like capillaries, pulsing. We ran the engines at full power to break through. The Nautilus didn't move. Instead, the ice above opened a single eye and blinked. The cook won't enter the galley anymore, says the pots whisper to him. Call him by his mother's voice. She's been dead 20 years. We caught him trying to boil his own hand. Claimed it wasn't his. At exactly 2:17 a.m. Every light bulb on board flickered to life and hummed the national anthem. The Soviet one. We're not Soviet. Someone marked a chalk line along the floor of the hallway. Crossed it. Lost time. He came back 7 hours older. Beard grown. Nails cracked. He swore it was only seconds. One crewman said he saw the sun again. Bright and warm. He took off his uniform. Smiled. Froze solid mid-step. There is no sun down here. The pipes don't carry water anymore. We tapped one and heard voices chanting. Latin. Maybe. We have no priest on board. But someone keeps leaving communion wafers on our pillows. The submarine isn't sinking, but we're descending in ways no depth gauge can measure. September 12th. I haven't blinked in 36 hours. Not out of fear. I just don't feel the need to anymore. The medic says our tear ducts are dry. He says that like it's normal. Crewman 9 carved open the hull with a fork. Not scratch carved. Through steel. It closed behind him like it had skin. We all saw it, no one mentions it. The walls breathe now. We timed it. Every 9 seconds in and out. The air is warm when it exhales. Our food supply has not decreased. We've been eating daily, but the cans remain full. Same brands, same dents. We marked one can. Still there, still sealed. No one opens it anymore, just in case it notices. I had a dream. The ship was upside down, yet we walked on the ceiling. I woke up. We were still on the ceiling. Gravity forgot us. Captain Wilkins stopped using the radio. Said the voice on the other end was his own, but older, tired, and screaming. There's a door in the storage bay now. Not welded, not installed. Just there. It has no handle, but knocks come from the other side every midnight. Always 3. Always exactly 0, 0, 0. We stopped checking the clocks. They tick forward, backward, sometimes sideways. One melted, one multiplied. Time isn't broken here. It just doesn't care. The cold is no longer just outside the submarine, it's inside our bones. The steel hull, once a sturdy shield against the Arctic's brutal grip, now feels like a thin barrier, barely holding back the endless creeping frost. Every breath we take is laced with icy whispers, the air chilling our lungs like shards of glass. The crew, once lively and hopeful, are now shadows hunched over narrow bunks or slumped against the cold bulkheads. Faces gaunt, eyes hollow, each man carries the weight of a silent dread. Conversations have dwindled to murmurs, and even those are rare, as if words might summon something lurking just beyond the walls. At night, the submarine creaks and groans under the crushing weight of the ice above. It's not just the physical strain, the metal shrieks like a living thing in pain. We lie awake, listening to the echoes, wondering if the ship will give out, or if we will simply become frozen memories trapped beneath the Arctic ice. Our dreams are no refuge. They twist into strange visions of endless white, of falling through cracks that lead to bottomless darkness. Sometimes we dream of warmth fires that never burn out, voices calling us home, but those moments are brief and bittersweet, fading quickly as the cold reality returns. Despite the despair, a fragile hope flickers in the hearts of a few. The thought that somehow, against all odds, we might break through the ice, glimpse the untouched horizon, and return to tell the tale keeps us alive. It's a thread we cling to in the endless night beneath the polar sea. But the North Pole is unforgiving, and this submarine is a fragile speck against its vast frozen fury. This is the story of survival, desperation, and the stubborn human spirit trapped inside a metal coffin beneath the Arctic ice. Inside the submarine, every sound is amplified: the drip of condensation, the faint hum of the engines, the restless shuffling of sailors. The cold metal floor presses hard beneath your feet as you rise, muscles stiff from the frigid air and cramped quarters. The submarine's narrow corridors feel like a maze with no end, lined with pipes that seem to pulse with a life of their own. You move past the engine room where the diesel engines cough and rattle, fighting to keep you moving beneath the ice. The smell here is thick oil mixed with sweat and something sour from days without fresh air. The machinery is old, patched up with makeshift repairs, but it's all that stands between you and the crushing silence outside. The crew works in shifts, rotating through endless watches to keep the sub on course. Some men are stationed at the periscope, eyes scanning the shadowy ice above, hoping for a crack or a glimpse of open water. Others monitor the gauges and instruments, their faces tight with concentration and fatigue. You find yourself drawn to the radio room, where messages from the outside world are sparse but vital. The crackling signals bring faint hope that rescue or relief might still be possible. But more often than not, the silence stretches longer than the voices. As the days crawl by, the cold seeps deeper, settling into your bones. The thin blankets and wool uniforms offer little defense. Fingers grow numb, and feet ache with frostbite's early sting. Morale is low, but you try to keep your spirits up, telling stories or singing quietly to break the oppressive quiet. Outside, the ice is a vast, frozen desert, unyielding and merciless. You know the submarine is trapped beneath it, a tiny metal bubble in a vast wilderness of ice and snow. Every moment is a fight to survive, a struggle to hold on to hope in the darkest, coldest of places. The hours blur together in the submarine's dim light. Time loses meaning. Whispers of fear ripple through the crew. Some wonder if the ice above will ever crack, if the submarine will ever break free. Others talk quietly about the dangers of suffocation or being crushed by the weight of the Arctic itself. Yet despite the fear, a stubborn resolve keeps everyone moving forward. You find yourself thinking about the outside world, the cold, yes, but also the warmth of home, the laughter of friends and family. You clutch these memories like a lifeline, a spark of humanity in a cold, mechanical cage. In moments of silence, the isolation feels almost unbearable. The crushing loneliness of being trapped underwater, with only the creaking steel and the breathing of 19 other men, presses down like the ice above. The mind begins to wander, slipping into dreams and fears, wondering how long this strange voyage will last. The submarine's metal frame groans occasionally, a reminder that the sea's pressure is always pressing in. Every sound echoes through the narrow corridors, magnified by the claustrophobic space. Conversations are hushed. Even laughter seems like a risk, a disturbance in the eerie stillness. Sir Hubert Wilkins, the expedition leader, moves among the men with quiet determination. He knows the risks, but is driven by the promise of discovery. His vision of reaching the North Pole beneath the ice has captured imaginations, but the reality is far harsher than anyone anticipated. The cruise days are punctuated by the monotony of routine checks, the hum of the diesel engines, and the cold, unyielding metal that surrounds them. Sleep comes in fits and starts, stolen in shifts to make room for everyone. The close quarters force an intimacy that breeds both camaraderie and tension. Outside, the Arctic world remains an impenetrable white silence, frozen and still. The submarine's instruments flicker and beep, charting a path through an unknown underworld. Every dive, every turn is a gamble-owned wrong move, could mean disaster. Yet the men press on, bound by duty, hope, and the strange allure of the unexplored. The journey beneath the polar ice is a test of endurance, courage, and the human spirit's capacity to confront the unknown. The submarine's interior is a claustrophobic maze of narrow corridors, pipes, and machinery humming constantly. The walls are lined with valves and gauges, some flickering in the dim, flickering light. The air is thick with the smell of diesel and damp metal. Every breath you take feels recycled, stale, and cold. Outside, the Arctic ice presses in like an unforgiving giant. But inside the Nautilus, the cold is just as real, seeping through the thin steel and chilling every bone. You shuffle along the narrow passageway, the soles of your boots clanging on the metal floor, echoing softly. Each step stirs a cloud of dust that quickly settles back in the heavy, humid air. The submarine creaks under pressure, metal groaning in protest as it shifts with the movement of the water and ice outside. It's a constant reminder that you're trapped beneath thousands of tons of frozen ocean, a fragile speck in a vast and indifferent wilderness. The crew moves silently around you, each man focused on his duty. Their faces are lined with exhaustion, dirt, and the subtle fear that none of you dare speak aloud. You pass the cramped control room, where the captain pores over maps and charts by the faint glow of a kerosene lamp, his eyes scanning for the faintest sign of safe passage through the frozen labyrinth above. Down below, the engine room rumbles steadily, a heartbeat that powers this steel leviathan forward. Steam hisses and valves hiss, releasing bursts of pressure. The air here is even hotter and thicker, saturated with oil and sweat. The engineers work tirelessly, their faces smeared with grime, hands moving with practiced precision as they keep the engines running despite the punishing Arctic cold. You pause by a small porthole, peering out into the dark, ice-filled waters. Thick slabs of ice drift silently overhead, blotting out the faint light from above. It's a world of shadows and silence, where the crushing pressure of the ocean and the relentless cold create a prison unlike any other. The isolation inside the Nautilus is overwhelming. Days blend into nights without distinction, marked only by the rhythm of the crew's shifts and the constant drone of machinery. The loneliness gnaws at your mind, as does the creeping sense of danger lurking outside, waiting to crush, freeze, or suffocate you in this underwater tomb. The sound of dripping condensation echoes faintly through the corridors, a slow, steady reminder of the water seeping in despite the submarine's armor. It's a small but chilling reminder that even the most solid steel is not impervious to the harshness of the Arctic. Your stomach grumbles again, but the food is meager hardtack biscuits, salted meat, and thin broth that barely touches the chill inside your bones. The damp wool blanket barely offers warmth, and you find yourself constantly shivering beneath it. Sleep comes in short bursts, interrupted by the creaks and groans of the vessel and the occasional command shouted down the narrow hallways. Despite the hardships, there is a strange camaraderie among the men. You share quiet jokes and stolen moments of warmth in the cramped mess area, clinging to the hope that this insane journey will end safely. But deep down, you all know the odds are stacked against you. Outside, the Arctic night stretches endlessly, a dark void pierced only by the faint shimmer of distant stars and the occasional eerie glow of the aurora borealis. Beneath the ice, the world is silent and cold, a place that has claimed many before you and shows no mercy to those who dare challenge it. And yet, you press on, driven by the stubborn hope of exploration, discovery, and survival against all odds. The submarine's hull vibrates subtly as the engines strain against the crushing weight of the Arctic ice. Every man aboard feels it, the ever-present tension between the fragile steel that encases you and the unyielding environment pressing in from all sides. You glance at the other crew members. Some stare blankly ahead, eyes glazed from exhaustion and cold. Others quietly tend to their duties, hands trembling despite thick gloves. Your thoughts drift to the mission's origin. Sir Hubert Wilkins, a daring and somewhat reckless explorer, had convinced a hesitant backer to fund this unprecedented attempt to reach the North Pole beneath the ice. His vision was bold: to navigate the submarine Nautilus, a relic of the First World War, transformed into a vessel of Arctic exploration. The challenge was enormous, not just the navigation through shifting ice floes, but surviving the inhospitable cold, dwindling supplies, and the ever-present danger of mechanical failure in such a remote place. The crew's training was minimal for this kind of mission. Most were seasoned submariners from the war, accustomed to the claustrophobic conditions and perils of underwater combat, but none had faced the unique challenges of Arctic ice. The submarine itself was modified, hastily reinforced hull plates, experimental sonar, and basic heating systems. The hope was that these changes would be enough. As the days wore on, the monotony and tension gnawed at your mind. Each minute stretched endlessly in the cramped darkness. Communication with the outside world was non-existent, leaving you isolated in a silent world under miles of frozen sea. Letters home were written in cramped handwriting, filled with tentative hope, but also raw fear. In this frozen labyrinth, every sound seemed amplified. The metallic groan of the hull as it flexed, the hiss of escaping steam, the clatter of tools in tight compartments, and the distant coughs or whispers of your fellow crew members. Sleep was restless and broken by nightmares of being trapped forever beneath the ice. Meals were a bleak ritual, thin soups and rationed portions barely sustaining energy. The cold seeped into your bones despite layers of clothing, and frost gathered around the portholes, dimming the already faint light. You would sometimes catch glimpses of the surreal underwater world, ghostly shapes of fish darting through dark water, distant shadows of ice formations, and the shifting colors of filtered Arctic light. Every day brought new challenges. The submarine systems needed constant maintenance to prevent catastrophic failures. The crew worked around the clock, hands raw and blistered, faces grim but determined. There was no room for error. A single mistake could mean disaster in these remote waters. Yet, despite the hardships, there was a strange beauty to this frozen frontier. Through a small, thick porthole, you occasionally saw shimmering ice crystals drifting in the water, the faint glow of bioluminescent creatures, and the eerie silence of the deep ocean. It was a world few had glimpsed, a haunting testament to nature's power and mystery. And so, trapped inside this steel tube beneath the Arctic ice, you continued forward, driven by the fragile hope of discovery, the call of adventure, and the stubborn human spirit that refuses to surrender even in the face of overwhelming odds. And then one night, after days of slow crawling through frozen waters, the sonar returned something strange. A gap. An opening. Apollonia, a rare patch of open water amidst the Arctic ice. It was small, maybe only a few hundred meters wide, but it was enough. Wilkins gave the order. You surfaced into the bitter air. The hatch cracked open, and for the first time in what felt like centuries, you felt real wind. Not recycled, stale submarine air, but the sharp, clean breath of the earth. You clambered out into the night, and stood there with the others, staring at the stars, actual stars. Some men wept openly. Others laughed. Some just stared, too numb to react. The submarine, battered, leaking, and frostbitten, bobbed quietly on the surface of a desolate Arctic sea. You were nowhere near civilization, but you were above the ice, and that alone felt like a miracle. Eventually, a Norwegian fishing vessel spotted your distress flare. It took days to rendezvous, but when it arrived, there were cheers and embraces and long silences. No one really knew what to say. You'd survived. That was all that mattered. Back on land, the press didn't know what to do with the story. It wasn't a triumph, not really. You hadn't reached the pole, but you had done something else, something harder to explain. You had lived through something impossible, something most people would never believe unless they'd been inside that freezing steel coffin with you. Wilkins never tried the expedition again. The Nautilus was eventually scrapped. Most people forgot the voyage. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't a victory. But for you, it became the defining experience of your life, the cold, the fear, the camaraderie. The way your breath curled in the air in total silence. The weight of the ice above. And as you sit now, older, warmer, maybe a little wiser, you think about those days more than you ever expected. About the men, about the Nautilus, about how sometimes surviving is the only story you need. You dream about it sometimes. The hum of the engines, the drip of water from the bulkhead, the endless creaking of metal under strain, like the submarine itself was groaning in pain. You remember Mason's steady voice giving orders, the clatter of boots in the corridor, the hiss of breath when someone dared to look at the pressure gauges. Some nights, you wake up with a taste of oil in your mouth, convinced you're still in that steel coffin beneath the ice. And yet, oddly, there's something beautiful about the memory too. The silence of the Arctic, the way the world vanished outside the hull. No politics, no news, just men, water, and time. You learned what people are really made of when the walls close in and the temperature drops. You learned about kindness, too, the way someone would give up their last dry sock for a freezing crewmate, or share their rations, even when it meant going a little hungrier themselves. You saw what leadership looked like, not in medals or speeches, but in how Wilkins listened before he spoke, how he sat with the men, even when things were falling apart. Years later, when people asked about it, you just smile a little and say, "We made it." You never told them about the nightmares, or how long it took to stop flinching when you heard metal groan in the heat, or how a part of you, a small, cold part, never really left the ice. History books might skip over your names. Maybe they'll mention Wilkins, maybe not. Maybe they'll call it a failure. But you know better. You know what it cost, what it meant. And now, as the world outside your window ticks toward dawn, you lie back and let yourself drift. The hum of memory is softer now, warmer. The Nautilus is still there, somewhere deep in your mind, cruising slowly under frozen stars. And you're still on board, still surviving. Back in 1931, when the world was lurching between wars and uncertainty, the idea of sailing a submarine under the Arctic was more than bold, it was borderline mad. But Sir Hubert Wilkins didn't see it that way. He saw a challenge worth tackling, an unexplored frontier, a path towards scientific advancement. He believed the submarine was the ideal vessel for under-ice exploration. It was self-contained, pressure-resistant, and could avoid the crushing ice on the surface. That was the theory, at least. The truth was far messier. Wilkins wasn't a sailor in the traditional sense. He was an explorer, a dreamer. And sometimes dreamers are the only ones reckless enough to try the impossible. But even he knew this journey would stretch the limits of endurance and technology. The US Navy had decommissioned the O-12 for a reason. By the time Wilkins acquired it, it was At some point, time begins to blur. Days and nights lose their meaning when you're surrounded by darkness and ice. You mark time by meals and shifts, by the soft chime of the ship's bell, by the rhythmic hum of the electric motors. The clocks on board still tick, but it's more out of habit than necessity out here. Under the Arctic, time moves differently. Sir Hubert Wilkins paces the control room, his breath clouding in the cold air. His eyes scan the maps and dials, but his expression is unreadable somewhere between relentless focus and the creeping dread that something might go terribly wrong. Despite the circumstances, he never raises his voice. He speaks with calm clarity, and somehow that helps. His confidence, whether genuine or not, is a thread holding the crew together. You remember the moment it really sank and how far from safety you were. It was when the ice above shifted and a loud, thunderous crack echoed through the hull. Everyone froze. You all stared at the ceiling, as if you could see the frozen tons of pressure above ready to collapse in. The sound passed, but it left something behind in each man. A tightening in the chest, a quiet fear that would never quite go away. Some crewmen began to fray at the edges. One man, Peterson, started muttering to himself constantly. Another, Dawson, sat silently for hours, staring at a spot on the wall as if it might speak to him. You tried to focus on the routines. They were the only thing tethering you to sanity. Checking the oxygen scrubbers, writing in your journal, counting bolts, polishing brass fixtures just to keep your hands moving. The cold was the worst part. Not the pain you learned to live with that, but the way it crept inside you. It dulled your thoughts. It made you forget what warmth felt like. You dreamed of fire, of summer fields, of the sun on your skin, and you'd wake up shivering, drenched in sweat from a bunk that never quite dried. There were moments of laughter, too. Forced, sometimes delirious, but real. Someone would tell a story from home. Someone else would sing off-key during night duty. There was a shared understanding. If you didn't laugh at least once a day, the ice would win. The silence would win. Then came the mechanical failures. One after another, the backup generator seized. A ballast tank jammed. Condensation shorted out part of the navigation controls. The engineer, Old Mason, worked day and night, his fingers stained with grease, his temper fraying. You helped where you could, holding flashlights, turning valves, fetching tools. Anything to avoid sitting still with your thoughts. Eventually, Wilkins gathered the crew. His voice was calm, but the words were heavy. We're losing more systems than we can repair. We're not going to reach the pole, but we're going to make it back. That's our new mission now, survival. There was silence after that. No one protested. No one cheered. You just nodded, each man silently accepting that the dream was over. The legend would not be born in this voyage. But if you made it home, you'd still have a story few on Earth could ever match. A story of what it's like to stare death in the face and not blink. To sail through darkness, beneath ice, powered by rusting machinery and a spark of stubborn hope. The journey back wasn't easier, in fact. It felt longer. You knew what awaited now. More cold, more damp, more hours spent holding your breath every time the hull groaned. But something had shifted in the crew. You weren't chasing glory anymore. You were fighting for each other. Somewhere along the route south, the engines stalled completely. The submarine floated silently under the ice, drifting dead in the water. Panic almost took hold. The air grew stale, heavy with carbon dioxide. Lights dimmed. Men whispered prayers. Some cried quietly into their blankets. But Wilkins didn't falter. Neither did Mason. With almost no power, they managed to reroute enough charge from the emergency battery to bring the engines back online just barely. Some of the men barely spoke during those final days. Fatigue had hollowed them out. Sleep was rare, and when it came, it was shallow and disturbed by dreams of drowning, or being trapped beneath endless sheets of ice. Others became eerily focused, clinging to routine as if it were the only thing keeping madness at bay, cleaning tools that no longer worked, checking dials that had frozen solid. Wilkins, to his credit, remained composed in front of the crew, but in the quiet of the control room, he wrote in his journal with shaking hands. The entries from those days later, discovered and published, reveal a man who questioned every decision he'd made. Not because he regretted the dream, but because he knew the weight of what he'd asked from the men who followed him. They finally reached Bergen, Norway. The Nautilus was towed into port, looking like a ghost shiprust streaked, patched with frostbitten paint, and listing slightly from ballast imbalances they no longer had the tools to fix. Locals gathered on the dock to witness its arrival, expecting a triumph, maybe even a hero's welcome. What they saw instead was a crew gaunt with exhaustion and a submarine that looked as if it had been chewed and spat out by the Arctic. Wilkins gave a short press conference. He thanked the crew. He praised the bravery of the men, but he didn't claim victory. Not really. He spoke about data gathered and experiences logged. He hinted that the mission proved the concept of under-ice exploration. But no one in the room could deny the truth. The Arctic had won. The U.S. Navy quietly decommissioned the Nautilus for good. She was scuttled in 1931, sunk deliberately off the coast of Norway. Her hull now rests beneath the sea, slowly rusting away, one of many wrecks whose stories remain half forgotten. And yet, for a brief moment, the world did remember. National Geographic published a piece about the expedition, complete with grainy black and white photos of the crew and vessel. Some academics praised the mission's daring. Others mocked its impracticality. But none of them had been there. None had woken to frozen pipes and stale air. None had risked their lives in a floating relic beneath the unforgiving ice. You, though you've now traveled alongside them, in imagination, maybe, but imagination is where all adventure begins. Floating relic, patched together by engineers who were doing their best with outdated parts and limited funding. They renamed her Nautilus, after Jules Verne's fictional submarine, a fitting name, perhaps too fitting. The crew didn't share Wilkins's confidence. They were practical men, engineers and sailors who'd seen what pressure and cold could do to machinery and to the human mind. Before the journey even began, there were whispers of disaster, of doomed ambition, but the mission pressed on. They set out from New York in late June, aiming to reach the Arctic Circle through the Atlantic. On paper, it was a route filled with checkpoints and contingency plans. In reality, each mile brought them closer to an environment no submarine had ever dared to enter. When they reached the northern seas, everything changed. The light grew, strange days lasted forever or vanished entirely. Icebergs loomed in the distance like silent fortresses. And then came the moment they'd all been dreading, diving beneath the pack ice. There was no turning back after that. Every system on board was pushed to its limits. The engines sputtered in the cold. Moisture condensed on every surface, dripping constantly and shorting out electrical panels. Food spoiled quickly, and morale decayed faster. Men grew irritable, withdrawn. Some began talking to themselves. Others stared blankly at the bulkheads for hours. And still, Wilkins pushed forward. They encountered mechanical failure after mechanical failure. The depth gauges froze. The batteries faltered. More than once, they lost power entirely and drifted in pitch-black silence under a ceiling of solid ice. Any rescue would have been impossible, but somehow they kept going. Maybe it was pride, maybe it was sheer stubbornness, or maybe it was that curious human trait, the refusal to accept that we've gone too far to return. At one point, a pipe burst near the engine room, spraying freezing water over the machinery. Sparks flew. Smoke filled the chamber. One of the crew leapt in without hesitation, burning his hands to shut off the valve. They didn't even know his name outside the Navy roster. But in that moment, he was the only reason the Nautilus didn't become a tomb. When they finally surfaced weeks later and hundreds of miles from their intended destination, submarine was barely functional. They limped back to civilization, battered and humiliated. The press called it a failure, The Navy washed its hands of the experiment. Funding disappeared. Wilkins was quietly pushed to the sidelines of exploration, but those who were there knew better. They had been further under the Arctic than any vessel in history. They had tested the limits of 1930's technology and found its breaking point. And above all, they had survived. The return journey was no less harrowing. With mechanical systems failing and the submarine barely seaworthy, every mile toward home felt like a gamble. The propeller shaft groaned under strain. Water pumps failed intermittently. And morale? It was a flickering ember. And if you listen closely now, you can almost hear the metallic creak of the Nautilus's hull shifting against the pressure of the Arctic depths. You can almost smell the oil and mildew, feel the bite of frost in your lungs, and sense the low thrum of a machine struggling to stay alive in a world that was never meant to be traversed by humans. The mission may have failed by traditional standards: no successful transit under the polar ice cap, no dramatic scientific breakthrough, no triumphant photos at the North Pole, but it marked something else. A moment in history when imagination collided with reality in the most dramatic way. Sir Hubert Wilkins wouldn't attempt another under-ice expedition. The failure weighed heavily on him, and for the rest of his life, he would speak about the Arctic voyage with a mixture of pride and pain. He returned to more traditional exploration and lecturing, always advocating for scientific curiosity. But the Nautilus remained a ghost in his memory, unfinished, unresolved. Some of the men who had joined him never spoke of it again. Others told stories at bars for decades, half in jest, half in horror. A few suffered from what we would now call PTSD. The isolation, the darkness, the constant threat of death, they all left scars. But still, it mattered. Because human history isn't made only by the flawless victories. It's shaped just as much by the bold, messy, terrifying failures. The Nautilus voyage reminded the world of what it takes to push into the unknown, not just money or machinery, but raw courage and a willingness to lose. And tonight, as you lie there warm and safe, with the sounds of the modern world humming gently around you, it's worth remembering the men who went north in a war machine refitted for dreams. Sleep now. Let the cold fade from your bones. Let the distant sounds of grinding ice and creaking steel fall away. You're no longer in the Arctic. You're home, and the ghosts of the Nautilus are finally at rest.